We've been to many cities in Europe, especially since we lived there for a year and a half. Well, they've all been really cool, but this one really stands out. And this was a recent vacation that we took to Prague. So we flew out of Boston via Delta Airlines and, of course, landed in the Prague terminal and stayed at the Hotel Savic. And it was centrally located, and in fact, you can see it right there, that little marker right there. For orientation purposes, this is the town center where there's a lot of activity. We'll see some of it. And then over here is the Charles Bridge, as it's known in English, over the Vltava River, which we'll see several times in different places in this presentation. So there's the Savic. Notice how narrow the streets are. Fortunately, we did not rent a car. I'm glad we didn't, because this would have been rather difficult driving. And many of the streets, as you can see here, are paved with cobblestone. And again, you can see how narrow these streets are from this aerial photo. So there's the entrance to the Savic, a renovated hotel. It's one of the older buildings. Well, I think they're all old in Prague. Most of them are. This has been thoroughly renovated, and there's a spiral staircase. We did not stay on that upper floor. That would have been difficult with our luggage because there was no elevator that goes up there. But you can see they've left some of the renovated walls bare so that they look the way they did originally with the original materials that were used to build it. Okay, that Charles Bridge is also known as Karlov Most, and again, it goes over the Vltava River. And there it is right there. And this is the entrance to the bridge, this gateway. And as you cross the bridge, there's all kinds of statues along this bridge, and you can see that there was a lot of activity. There were some balloon rides that were going on nearby. A lot of statues that signify different things. There's one right there. And again, the balloon ride, boats on the Vltava River. There, this balloon has just landed. And notice this. This is taken from the bridge. And you can see that there is a dam over here with a place to let water out. This portion of the river is at a lower level than this portion. And boats can get around this whole situation by this canal right over here. So they just zip along this canal and they end up in the lower portion of the river and then can continue their travels along the Vltava River. And there's a close-up of a boat that's about to do that. A lot of street musicians along this bridge, some really interesting sounds to listen to. And a lot of movies have been made in Prague. Apparently, it's relatively inexpensive to shoot there as opposed to Hollywood. And they even have a film special effects museum as well as various studio outlets. And this is just a subset of some of the films, various scenes of which, usually not the whole movie, but various scenes of which have been filmed in and around Prague. Well, on our first day, we walked over the bridge to the other part of town because I wanted to see the John Lennon Wall, which I had heard about. It's a wall that people can paint on whenever they want, and there's usually people painting there every day, covering up old paintings and just putting on new things. So it's kind of a jumble of different sayings related to John Lennon, various pieces of art that sort of relate to John Lennon, like we can see right here. It's really a very cool place to stay, especially if you're a John Lennon fan like I am. So here's that town square. A lot of activity goes on in the town square. And here's some panorama shots that I took of the square. One of the notable features, and it's highly distorted because of the panorama view here, but this is the astronomical clock, I should say the famous astronomical clock. And there's a regular photograph showing it. So every hour before it does its thing, it chimes, and there's some statues that appear through these windows here, behind these windows. Crowds form outside of this old clock. Closer view with various statues along the clock side. Here's another view of that. You can see there are these statues over here, some skeleton figures. A close-up of one of those skeleton figures. And a close-up of the actual clock. So it's about to go off at this point. And here it comes. So those doors open. Various figures make their way from one portion of the background to another portion through these windows. The crowds that form can be quite dense. This is a major attraction in the center square of Prague. And then the doors close until the next hour. The crowds disperse, and then as the next hour approaches, new crowds form. There's another view of those doors closing. And people applauding. Okay, we made our way to the old Jewish district. There's a Jewish cemetery there that's very famous. The crowds were too dense. I mean, we would had to have waited in line for a very long time. And this was an unusually hot summer day, late July, early August. And it was just too hot. So we didn't see the cemetery. There's a Jewish clock in a nearby area in the neighborhood of the cemetery. It's in Hebrew, obviously. But also nearby, we saw this synagogue, and it's called the Old New Synagogue. We went inside. There's an inner area. If you go too far in, you do have to pay to go in there, and we decided to not pursue that. So looking around town in Prague, again, some very narrow streets, as you can see, and some archways. Here's one of them. Obviously, you can see this is a very ancient European city. This is actually a church, this small round structure. And absinthe is still available, freely available in Prague. The active ingredient of absinthe is called thujon, and it has various effects on the nervous system. There is a neurotransmitter called GABA, and it acts on GABA to actually give you the sensation that you get from absinthe, which I decided to not try. But this is just an example. This is right off that town center square, this shop where you can buy absinthe, wine, and beer. And there's various brands, different colors. The original color was green. And in fact, the original green color gave way to a description of this. Absinthe was sometimes called the green fairy, as shown in this figure right here, the green fairy. But now it comes in different colors. Okay, so on our second day, we had a private tour, and we went down toward the southern part of the Czech Republic, stopping off at a castle called Hluboká nad Vltava. Vltava, again, because it is right next to the Vltava River. And so here is just to orient you where we were traveling, we went from Prague down this road here and made our way to this castle, which is just outside of Český Budějovice. I don't speak Czech, obviously. Budějovice. Okay, that's totally wrong. I totally slaughtered that. Ignore me. Anyway, it's rather ornate. Originally, we weren't going to go here, but our tour guide decided, hey, you guys are going to really, really like this, so let's take a little bit of a detour and go there. And it was really a cool castle. It's as you can see, it's white, and there's a bridge that goes over the moat, even though the moat, I believe, was all dried up. And then you go into this inner square, and you can see there's antlers adorning the walls of this inner portion of the castle. Some close-up of these antlers. And looking upward to this tower. I actually made my way up to the top of this tower. We'll see some photographs that I shot from up there. And just another view of that tower from the bottom of this inner square. And now here I am on the top of the tower looking downward. So it's quite high. I did not go into the castle. My wife did. Castles often bore me, having to look at the insides. I prefer the outsides. So I just stayed outside and climbed the tower and took photographs of the various landscapes that you could see from up on top. And there, of course, you can see the Vltava River, same river that goes up to Prague, and quite scenic. The gardens, very, very well kept, very ornate, as you can see. We'll zoom in on that one a little bit, and you can see how meticulously kept they are. And this is not part of the river, this is a lake. And then after that, we headed toward Český Krumlov, which was actually our original destination because there's a castle there that apparently is very famous. By the way, our tour guide, who really knows the area inside and out, said that the reason he took us to the White Castle was it was so much nicer than Český Krumlov, which for some reason gets played up a lot. But anyway, there is this revolving theater along the way. And so you can see where that is. So again, Prague is up here, and this is the White Castle right here that we just visited. And then a little bit further down the road is this revolving auditorium, which is outdoors, and that's what it looks like. When they have performances, because this turns all the way around, they have different actors in different parts of the play on the lawns surrounding the entire theater that revolves. So there's not one stage. This just turns around and around, and that's where people can sit as it revolves around slowly, not this fast. I found this on the internet, and it does not go that fast. I think people would get very, very dizzy very, very quickly. Well, we did make our way to our original destination a little bit further south, Český Krumlov. So there it is, right? So that theater was right around there, and just a little bit further on up the road, down the road rather, is Český Krumlov. And again, there's the Vltava River once again, and another view. We saw a lot of boaters, people rowing on this river. There may have been some motorized boats as well, small ones. Notice Budweiser. This has nothing to do with the American Budweiser. There's a bit of a history there that's interesting that I'm not going to take the time to recount here. You can Google it. You'll get the whole story of the relationship between the original Budweiser in the Czech Republic and the American version, which I will withhold commentary on. Certainly not among my favorite beers, and I'll just stop it with that. But there it is on the Vltava River. So there are various places to stop and have some drinks and snacks and things like that. And one of the touristy streets along the way where there were various shops. Okay, so that was that day, and of course we drove back. And on the next day, we went to something I really wanted to see, Kutna Hora. We had another private tour, though it was a different company, so we had a different guide this time. But all the guides we had there were just great. So for orientation purposes, here's Prague, and then Kutna Hora is over in this direction, over toward the east. This is not the main reason I wanted to go there, though it was certainly very scenic. It's this church, and apparently Kutna Hora is also known for this church. And the inside, again, is in fact quite interesting. If you notice the ceiling, here's a close-up of that ceiling with all kinds of artwork. And then artwork all around the inside of this church. Incredible windows, as you can see. Well, after that, we walked down this walkway and got to a point where if you look back, and in fact, there's the church that we were just in over there. There's some vineyards along the way. Actually, this one's just, there's the walkway right there that we were just on. And we came down and around, and there's vineyards there, and the church is back over there. So they do make wine in this area. And then after that, we went into the town and looked around there very briefly. This is called the Stone Fountain. On the inside, because you can walk through that door, it looks like that. There's no water in there right now. Apparently at one time there was. This is the main reason I wanted to go to Kutna Hora. So this is not everybody's cup of tea. My wife did not like it. I knew she told me she wasn't going to like this, but she was a good sport and went along with it anyway. But I was really looking forward to this bone church in Sedlak, which is just outside of Kutna Hora. So here's the main area of Kutna Hora right there, and then just up the road here is the bone church. Now there it is on the outside, just looks like everyday ordinary church, right? And there's a graveyard over there. Well, the history of this is the graveyard got all filled up, and they were putting bodies on top of bodies on top of bodies until they still ran out of space. So they started digging up bodies, and this is ages ago. Nothing recent. I don't think they still bury people here. I could be wrong. But anyway, they had all these bones, human bones. And so they decided to decorate the inside of the church with these bones. So everywhere you look on the inside, this is the way in over here, there are bones, human bones, everywhere you look. Decorating this archway, all various human bones, skulls, leg bones, arm bones. And I was fascinated by this. I know there are other places in the world where they have this kind of thing, but I'd never seen one. I'd never been in an area where they had something like this, which is why I was really looking forward to it. Here's an entire chandelier that's made out of bones. And here's looking up at that chandelier. Pretty incredible. And again, everywhere you look, there are bones. This thing was really fascinating. This is a crest that, some kind of a family crest, I guess, that is made entirely of human bones. So there's skulls, there's longer bones, there's shorter bones to make up this very ornate crest. There's a zoom in of that portion of the crest right there. And again, a different view from a different angle. We're on the opposite side of that chandelier now. And these various standalone areas where they have racks of skulls and bones all around this church. This is my favorite photo. I love this photo. It came out so well. This is actually all behind a glass wall, but I managed to get into a spot where there was no reflection off the glass. And this goes down. This is sort of like a hollowed out area, and they put some lights back there for some kind of an effect, which I think works perfectly. And I decided to actually make a mug of this when I got back to the United States. There's my mug, and there's that photo I showed you on my computer screen. Okay, let's see. This may have been the next day, actually. We went to Prague Castle. Had to get there by a bus. Here's the Savic Hotel where we stayed, and I think we walked up to a bus stop here, took a bus over there, and then walked the rest of the way up to the castle, which is right over there. And there's a huge tourist attraction. A lot of people, as you can see, go to this church. There are tours you can take. Again, I did not. My wife did. I occupied myself in a more interesting way, as we'll see. But the incredible, really incredible stained glass. This is like the outer portion of the inside of the church where you don't have to pay to get in. And so it's a small area, but it was incredibly ornate. So these are the grounds of the church. There's the church right there. And these are gardens. This is the largest garden area right here. So I walked around outside, and here I am outside in one of those gardens. There's another round tower right there. It's called the Powder Tower. This rather large building, Queen Anne's Summer Place. So Queen Anne used to come down here in the summertime and stay in these gardens, which again, as you can see, are very well kept. And then after that, one thing I was really, really looking forward to, and no way I was going to miss this, I made my way to this monastery, Strahov Monastery. I walked from the castle about 1 kilometer along this road to this monastery. Why did I want to go there? One of our tour guides said that if I like beer, this is the best beer in Prague. You cannot get it anywhere other than inside this monastery. They don't can it, they don't bottle it. You can't even get it down in Prague, from what we were told. And so I do like beer. I don't like hard liquor, but I do like beer and I like red wine. So I said, okay, I got to go there. If this person who seemed to know her beers thought that this was like the best beer ever, so I decided to check that out. And so once you're in the grounds of that monastery, there is this little restaurant area right there where you go in. There's an inside area where you can sit indoors or an outside sort of a court. I sat in that court. This is the inside, by the way, but you can see the brewery right over inside here. And they brew all kinds of different types of beer. By the way, the placemats, unfortunately, they're in Czech, so I couldn't interpret. I was able to get a rough idea of what was going on. It shows you how they make the beer. And then again, a variety of beers. These beers change quite often, actually. So I'm told they'll just try different types of beer and make them available inside. And you also get this beer menu when you sit down, and you can see they have amber lagers, dark lagers, IPAs, and some other types, porters. And my favorite beer now is an IPA, but that's a relatively recent thing. I really kind of like light lagers, so I ended up getting an amber lager while I was there. And after that, and by the way, it really was great. At the time, it was the best beer I had, in fact, ever had. But since I returned to the States, and even in sometime after returning, I started to like IPAs, and IPAs are now my favorite beers, replacing the one that I had in the Czech Republic at the monastery. But if I were going to go back there, I would absolutely go back to that monastery for the beer. And so we then had to walk back. We decided not to wait for a bus. It was all downhill, so that was going to be pretty simple, relatively simple. So we decided to walk back to the center of town. There's a walkway right there that we went across, so you can see Prague down below. There's the walkway, pretty steep, but very manageable. A lot of people were walking down the walkway. As you can see, some people were walking up the walkway as well. And then that was it. The day after that, we went back to the airport, and we flew from the Prague airport back to Logan Airport in Boston. I highly recommend Prague. When people ask me, what's your favorite place in Europe that you've ever been to? Well, this doesn't quite qualify, but Iceland remains my favorite place for totally different reasons. We had more of a adventure type vacation there. But in terms of the mainland Europe, Prague is still my favorite place, and I hope to get back there sometime.